So you started to ask the question. So what do I do when?
I feel like I get in my way a lot. When you said I need to give myself a break, it seems that sort of rang true to me a little bit. As I need to, that inner conflict that you spoke about earlier is there for me, and I need to.
We're going to ask you some very straightforward questions. Do you care more about what your wife thinks about you or about your own satisfaction factor? Because if she's like most women, she's trained you to know the answer to that.
But I am very concerned with how she feels, and not necessarily what she thinks of me, but I want her to be happy, right?
But we can't ask you a question about how she feels because you can't know that. And so, how about this? Would you rather that she cares more about pleasing you or being in sync with who she really is?
Oh, being in sync with who she really is.
Well, now you answered that easily, but do you really mean it? Yes. Jerry used to say to Esther, you do too much for too many people. It's all right when you do it for me, but you do too much for too many other people. And they would both laugh, but they both knew he meant it. It's easy to please each other, but there's another factor that most humans haven't been considering, and it goes like this. If you're not tuned in, you really are not going to be that pleasing anyway.
No, I'm not.
And so now what's your question?
The question is more about the inner conflict, me getting in my own way.
Yes. In universal law terms, what might you do to get in your own way?
I get way overthinky. I overthink stuff.
And so let's have this discussion. So can you grasp the idea of the difference between a thought that you're thinking and a thought that you're receiving?
Oh, yeah.
So if you're in the receiving mode and receiving a thought, it's going to feel good. If you're thinking a thought, it might feel good and it might not, but it's a clue. So would that help you? When you're thinking a thought that doesn't feel good, could you abort the thought right away before it gets too much momentum? Or are you not aware that it's coming until it's so big you can't let go of it?
Oh, there's definitely a little bit of unawareness, because I would like to, as soon as I am aware, I'd like to, that's not a thought I want to have. Let's start thinking about happy things. As
far as the laws of the universe goes, that seems like a reasonable thing to do. So what keeps you from being able to do that easily? The thought got too much momentum going before you were aware of it. Mm-hmm. Or you're not picky enough about the way you feel. You're willing to put up with thoughts that don't feel that good, so you don't notice them till they really don't feel good. It's like if you're just bleeding a little, just wipe it on something. But if you have a gushing wound, it's prudent to do something more dramatic about it, yes? So it's the same sort of thing. It's about the momentum. We know that you are, and we are, because you are, we are exaggerating this bigger than your relationship is asking for. But you're fine-tuning. Once you've tasted the sweetness of alignment, you can hardly stand anything less than that. And the thing that happens, and we could really feel it when you first began speaking to us, in the earliest days of your relationship, that sweetness was so sublime. And it's still lurking in your memory as that consistent way that you felt. And you want to maintain that, and you can. You want to get that back. It's a consistency of it, because everybody can feel good every now and again. In other words, everybody can find thoughts that feel better. So let's go back to the essence of what's going on here, which is feeling the difference between a thought that you're thinking and a thought that you're receiving. So a thought that you're receiving, so you've awakened, you feel pretty good, then you meditated, you quieted your mind, and now you're in the receiving mode, and now those thoughts are starting to flow. And as those thoughts flow, they feel satisfying to you. They're usually positive thoughts about others. It's positive thoughts about yourself. It's things about things that you might want to do something about. In other words, it often inspires you to an action right away, where the thoughts that you think are usually things like your to-do list. They're usually things that I should be doing, or things that I should have done, or things that if I don't do, something negative will happen. Esther's been doing this a lot lately. She will be in the middle of a thought that suddenly she's aware has quite a bit of momentum, and she'll stop and say, from what mode of receiving did I get that thought? Did it come from alignment, or did it come from some need, or for someone else's clamoring? You can get someone really picky in your life who gives you grief if you don't do this or this or this. It's like working somewhere where there are lots of rules, and so those rules sort of inspire your action. Oh, can't do that. Oh, can't do that. Well, that's a hard way to live, rather than being free to follow your inspiration. It's sort of like having to stop at a stoplight in the middle of the night when there's no traffic coming from any direction, and sit there for the full 2 minutes and 30 seconds until that light decides to free you from your bondage. And every fiber of your being says, this doesn't make any sense. But if I break this rule, there's probably a policeman in the bushes who's trolling for revenue who will give me grief. And so you've sort of trained yourself to do illogical things because other people have rules and requirements. And so a lot of your behavior, we love you so much, but a lot of your behavior is offered because you're worried about the negative thing that will happen if you don't do it, rather than because you're inspired by your inner being's understanding of what lovely road this will take you down, you see. And so if we're standing in any of your physical shoes, we'd be asking that question when a strong thought comes. Where'd it come from? That come from source and what my inner being knows about all the things I want? Or am I trying to keep something bad from happening? And as you start to sort that out, then you'll find yourself gravitating more to the thoughts that feel better and less reacting to the conditions that are also generating some impulses.
I think I don't trust myself enough to discern where it is coming from.
Well, that's why what we said earlier means so much. We encourage you to quiet your mind for 15 or 20 minutes so that you can feel what it feels like when you receive a thought. And right now, those just sound like words. And maybe it seems like a good idea. You probably aren't going to do it. Maybe it sounds like a good idea, but until you actually decide and meditate and quiet your mind and do it for a day or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10, and then in meditation you actually, from a quieted mind, receive a thought and know you did, and then enthusiastically follow it where it leads you and see where it leads until you actually do that and have the experience of that, you can't know the power that we are asking you to tap into. And because you've tapped into that power without knowing you did it when you first met, nothing less than that will ever do. You're not ever going to be satisfied with less than that kind of dynamic relationship, where in the eyes of either one of you, you could do no wrong. And it wasn't because you were perfect. It was not because either one of you were perfect. It was because you were blinded by love. And that's what being in alignment with source energy is. You're blinded by love. The love is so dominant that it's all you know. And oh, that will serve you so well when you're blinded by love, when you're blinded by self-confidence, when you're blinded by clarity, when you just feel that. And how'd you get there? Oh, you just quieted your mind for a few minutes every morning. Big price to pay. And now thoughts are coming to you, and thoughts are coming to you, and thoughts are coming to you. And then you're moving through the universe, maybe with someone else, and maybe on your own that day. And the universe is so cooperative. Everywhere you turn, something sweet is happening to you. And you feel so blessed because you know for sure that everybody's not living like that, but you are. And why are you? Because you've tuned yourself to that frequency. And the receiving mode is such a strong signal that you know when to go this way, and you know when to go that way, and you know when to slow up, and you know when to go faster, and you know when to say this, and you know when to do that. You just get this intuitive knowing of dancing through life in a way, and others are looking at you and they're trying to figure out, what have you got going on? And you said, I stopped minding my wife. I stopped trying to please others in my life. Oh, well, that doesn't seem like that would work out that well. Well, at first it didn't. Until I stopped caring, until I stopped performing, until I stopped living conditionally. I didn't know the power of living unconditionally. And that's really what emotional guidance is. This vortex hasn't turned into a condition yet. It's an unconditional. It's an unrelational. It's an unfinancial. It's because it hasn't manifested into those things. And so it's a lot for us to ask you to take your attention away from all this juicy stuff that you can see and hear and smell and taste and touch, and put your attention upon this more subtle stuff that's all about emotion and how you feel.